Good evening, everybody. My name is Suzanne Hume. I'm the Educational Director and founder of CleanEarthForKids.org, and I would like to introduce to you Leanna Cortez.
So hi everyone, my name is Leanna. I'm a youth board member here at Clean Earth for Kids, as well as the team lead for Team 1 for climate action plans, sustainability, and renewable energy. So I just wanted to let everybody know that if students, if you are getting community service, make sure to fill out 2 pages of notes and a short summary of what you learned. All the directions are on our website at cleanearthforkids.org. Also, remember that we have K through 12 contests and challenges, so please remember to enter those. More information is on our website to what kind of things you can enter, whether it's art, media, essays, STEM, whatever you feel comfortable producing. Here are 6 teams. So Team 1, like I said, revolves around climate action plans, renewable energy, and sustainability overall. Team 2 focuses on like plants, our protecting our wildlife, our forests, our national parks, and public lands. Team 3 focuses on clean air, as air is really important, no idling, everything in terms of like air. Team 4 is water is life, focuses on water, making sure that there's no pipelines and no fracking and reducing oil spills and so forth. Team 4 is stopping pesticides and toxic chemicals, and making sure that we keep those out of parks, as well as no synthetic turf. And Team 6 is zero waste and no plastic. And those are our 6 teams. So the title of tonight's panel discussion is Becoming a Social and Environmental Justice Champion, Part 1, which is really important, especially during times like right now. So at Clean for Kids, we try to focus on environmental justice in each of our 6 teams, as a lot of environmental injustices and justices happen in correlation with everything. So environmental justice, like it says right there, means clean air to breathe and water to drink for all, and to make sure that no single group or area is disadvantaged in terms of getting access to those things. So we also are having a social and environmental justice commission. We are starting to create that because that's really important, especially like I said, when it comes to everything that is going on. So now that we are discussing environmental justice and everything, I'd like to introduce you guys all to Kevin.
Hey, I'm Kevin. I'm the co-lead of Team 3's Clean Air team. I think becoming an environmental champion takes dedication to keep doing what's hard, courage to speak out about what you know is wrong, and of course research to really understand what is wrong. I'm planning to become a nurse practitioner, or I'm studying towards that because I like to help people, and I always really wanted to join the healthcare field. So I'm gonna, uh, introduce you to some air pollution facts and some slides about how air pollution is bad, and how it correlates to race. So if the slide could go on to the first.
Kevin, go ahead, Kevin. Just go ahead and share your info. We're having a few technical difficulties, which we apologize. You've got great stuff, so we'll just keep up with you. So you've got it all. You're amazing, and we're just so excited to learn from you. Thank you.
All right. So no visual presentation, but what is air pollution? So air pollution is the presence of a harmful substance or harmful particles in the air which one can breathe in. And breathing in those said substances can cause damage to your lungs and other organs. So the reason why is because of how small they are, the particles. You know, the smaller the particles, the more likely it is to get under everything and kind of just disrupt the way your body functions. So human bodies can't really defend against them since they're that small. They're small as dust or pollen or mold, or smaller than even. And dust, pollen, and mold are major allergens. Imagine having something smaller than that come into your body and disrupting it. You get allergies from dust, pollen, mold. You know, those smaller substances can cause greater harm. So, excuse me, my throat is dry. According to a Harvard University study, a national study really, a long-term exposure to air pollution and COVID-19, there's a connection between that. And so if people have lung issues already due to air pollution, COVID-19, the chances of them dying to COVID-19 increases. And we're still in a national crisis, well, a global crisis really. And air pollution, having that there and having COVID-19, we have to really do something about air pollution to, you know, maybe decrease the mortality rate of COVID-19. So according to a study by Johns Hopkins Medicine, there's a disproportionate rate of COVID-19 illness and death in Black communities. This really says a lot, because there's a lot of air pollution going on in Black communities as it is. So the mortality rate for COVID-19 just is pretty high. And then there's the next slide, which is a map of where this major air pollution is, or like where it all happened. And then,
so last week, Judith shared about where the coal plants were and talked about MATS. So MATS is Mercury and Air Toxic Standards and the rollback by the Trump administration. So we're very concerned about additional heavy metals in the air and toxic pollution in the air. So yes, the map showing all of the terrible pollution, as Kevin has talked about, communities of color are more at risk because they live closer to sources of air pollution. So this has been documented and we're very concerned. So absolutely, thank you so much. I think there are a few other things to share. So this one here is, again, yes, looking at the community of color and the pollution burdens. So thank you so much for sharing all of that very important information and being with us and knowing all about air pollution and particularly.
oh, internet cut out.
Suzanne, we can't hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, tonight, I just have to say our technical issues have just been there, but this was my fault. I did not unmute myself. So I was trying to share about the air pollution and the problems with the communities of color. So yes, I just done that. And what MATS is, Mercury and Air Toxic Standards, the rollback with the Trump administration, and the map showing where coal plants are. We know that this is a huge problem. Lots of concern there. Thank you, Kevin, for talking to us about particulate matter and how things get lodged in our lungs, and helping us, because being a part of an environmental champion, the first thing we need to do is become informed. And so that's just so important. Thank you so much for your important research and all of that great stuff. So I know that Darren, you are going to share with us some information about pesticides and pesticide drift, and also some things that are happening locally in San Diego with pollution and pesticides and all of that great stuff. So if you could share that with us, it would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. So not only are we concerned about how air pollution disproportionately affects communities of color, but pesticides also are disproportionately affecting farm workers who, the majority of them are people of color. So agricultural workers are very vulnerable to pesticides, since even if they aren't the ones applying the pesticides, they are the ones picking the food and dealing with the food that has been sprayed by pesticides. So there's a disproportionate effect that they suffer from. 20,000 US farmers each year get pesticide poisoning, and a majority of agricultural workers in California and in the rest of the nation are undocumented, and these undocumented workers are less likely to report pesticide poisoning, so those numbers are likely to be higher. They just go underreported. Also, child agricultural workers are less likely to report, so those numbers might be less severe than in reality. So we just need to keep that in mind when we're talking about these statistics. We're also concerned about children, expectant mothers, those with pre-existing health conditions, and everyone living near these fields, because these people are particularly vulnerable to pesticides. Children and the fetuses and expected mothers can suffer a lot from child development issues, learning disabilities, affecting their growth, so things like that. And even if they aren't directly in contact with pesticides, pesticide drift contributes massively to the public health issue posed by these toxic chemicals. Pesticide drift describes the phenomenon of airborne particles of a pesticide moving and landing in places where it's not intended to go. So this could either be from a spray, where the spray just doesn't land on the plant and it travels in the wind, or it was a liquid pesticide that vaporized. And this is bad because the health effects for most pesticides, most people are suffering them from pesticide drift, not necessarily eating the food or coming into contact with contaminated water. For example, dicamba, which increases the risk of cancer in humans, most of that risk, the increased risk, is from people who have come into contact with it when the pesticide was airborne. And so one particular issue in San Diego that is actually happening like within a few minutes of where we all live, or most of us, or people here on the panel at least, there's this company called West Coast Tomato, and they have a field that's extremely near a lot of residential areas and Mission Vista High School. So a lot of these communities are going to be exposed to a lot of different pesticides. This company used over 11,000 pounds of pesticides last year, and they use 51 types of pesticides. A lot of them are banned in other countries. 18 of them are banned in other countries because of how severe the health effects are. And so even the ones that aren't banned, they're probably all have some health effect, but those are the ones that are very obviously affecting our populations, and right in our backyard these are being used. So we talked about a few of these in past presentations, but sorry. A lot of them are things that we haven't covered, but we've covered Diazinon, which has been to 32 countries, and a lot of these other ones that we haven't covered, they still have these health effects, child development, cancer, affecting the liver, the lungs, also connections with other health risks because it affects the immune system a lot of the time. So that can translate to a lot of health effects, not directly from the pesticide, but just as a result of a compromised immune system. So one thing we can do about this is to ban chlorpyrifos, which the Trump administration has rejected this ban as part of one of their 100 rollbacks. But there's a petition right now to reverse that decision. Chlorpyrifos that is found in our food, water, and air can cause damage to neurological function, the central nervous system, the cardiovascular system, and respiratory system. It's been banned in 3 states already, but we'd like it to be banned in all states because of the health risk that it poses. And so this petition from Earthjustice can be found on our website. It's very easy. You just put in your information and it will automatically send emails to your senator and congress member, so that hopefully this will get more attention and put more pressure on them to fight for this. So yes. And then I'd like to hand it off to Leanna now.
Okay, thank you so much, Darren, for all that information. Like Darren said, make sure to go to the Earthjustice link. It's really simple, just to ask your senator and congress member to ban the use of this really toxic pesticide. So thank you again, Darren. So I just want to talk a little bit about something that's happening here in San Diego and how it also relates to the federal level as well. Like we discussed earlier, today's topic or theme for this discussion is becoming a social and environmental justice warrior. And one of these steps is like obviously educating and informing yourself, but also learning about other possibilities, and this kind of pertains to that. So recently here in San Diego, there is a COVID-19 task force for equitable recovery, and that is led by Supervisor Nathan Fletcher. So currently we're working on a San Diego Green New Deal Alliance for a just recovery from COVID-19 that prioritizes racial, economic, and climate justice, which is really, really important as we see the connections between racial, economic, and climate justice in instances like air pollution or pesticides, where people of color and communities that have lower income are more easily impacted by these things and are all that stuff. So a little bit brief about what the Green New Deal is. It's essentially a package of legislation that addresses climate change and economic inequalities. So it combines environmental and social justice while also prioritizing the shift from fossil fuels to clean energy and renewable energy sources, especially with in terms of job markets. It is estimated that if the Green New Deal is implemented, there will be 30 million jobs produced. So that's really, really cool. So the reason why people are calling for a Green New Deal, especially after this COVID-19 situation, is because it advocates for a shift from fossil fuel dependence to clean energy, while also considering important things that we've discussed, like environmental justice and a lot more. So not only is it creating a lot of jobs to help us combat climate change, it's also taking action on a federal level, while also prioritizing environmental justice, as it connects a lot to the current COVID-19 situation. And our entire recovery from COVID-19 will encompass much more than health. It'll encompass the environment and the job market and economy and so much more. And so there's a lot of connections here between this Green New Deal and the state of our nation and sort of the world right now. So it's really important because we need strong action. We need strong collective action because, like I mentioned, the climate crisis is so connected to a lot of aspects of our life, whether that be health, jobs, homes, so much more. So if we don't take the strong collective action, this issue will be a little bit harder to fix. So, oops, sorry. So there's also these rollbacks that we're going to discuss a little bit. We've had previous panel discussions discussing these rollbacks. On our website, we have at cleanforkids.org, by the way, we have a graphic, an article about the 100 rollbacks that are, or undoings of protections for our air, water, and public lands. So you guys can go read that article. These are a lot of really important protections that are being stripped by the current Trump administration. So people are being exposed to higher levels of pollution, and it's making it harder for certain animals to be protected and so forth. So as Darren mentioned earlier, you know, we have to have protection from pesticides and like stop using these toxic pesticides. And we need to have these buffer zones and not allow these toxic chemicals to be sprayed. And so we need these protections, but unfortunately we're being stripped of them. We also have to stop these rollbacks because we want to try and decrease air pollution as possible. And as Kevin was talking about how deadly air pollution can be, especially during times like the COVID-19 situation. So we need these rollbacks. We don't need these rollbacks to occur. We want them to we want these protections to stay. So the Columbia University tracker is really great. It's on our website as well as the Harvard tracker. So we can look at a lot of rollbacks, particularly affecting climate. And it has a little explanation, the agency it's dealing with, what the status of it is, if it's being finalized, and it has a bunch of updates. So both the Columbia tracker and the Harvard tracker have a lot of great information out there. Also, when we were talking about environmental injustices and stuff like that, we talked a little bit last week about heat islands. So climate change makes heat more intense, right? When the heat gets, it becomes this like blanket through greenhouse gases that capture the heat, and it warms a lot of our cities. So we create these heat islands that happen, especially in parts where there's not a lot of trees, and these kind of concrete jungles, you could call them. So there's no trees to provide shading, and there's not a lot of soil and grass to provide nice runoff or cooling with the soil and everything. So less trees, less soil, less grass means greater heat islands, which is important when learning how to be an environmental justice, that we pay attention to the importance of having more trees and more grass and everything, especially in areas like this. We also have to, so one way that we can kind of address these issues, right, is through climate action plans. So that's what Team 1 is all about, is climate action plans. So a lot of cities are stepping up and working on climate action plans to reduce greenhouse gases, which are the reason why we have this more intense extreme weather and climate change overall. So a climate action plan is this framework that cities, school districts, and so much more can use to learn how to mitigate the impacts of climate change. So you can always find out if your city has a climate action plan, or if they're looking to implement a climate action plan that they have come up with. We have tons of examples on our website under Team 1 climate action plans that you guys can utilize in your community if you guys do not already have one, or use it as an example to improve the climate action plan in your city, school district, and so forth. So we also mentioned in previous discussions about the American Cities Climate Challenge. So it's also kind of known as this like Mayor's Challenge. So it asks, it's through Bloomberg Philanthropies, and it asks local governments to propose bold solutions to a lot of the issues we're facing. One of them is climate change, and particularly in cities. So incentivizes local leaders to think creatively and come up with new approaches and innovation to any policy in their city, and see how they can create a more welcoming environment and a more sustainable environment in their city through things such as climate action plan. So in future weeks, our hardworking intern Maureen and I will share more climate action plans for schools and school districts, particularly as time goes on. So also we have our Call It Out challenge, where we students and many others can participate in. So you essentially choose a rollback or something that has in a law that has been stripped of and is about to harm our air, water, public lands, wildlife, climate overall, so many of those things. And you create some type of art, music, or media video, and you share it, and you basically call it out, and to bring more awareness to these rollbacks, and to make sure that we don't experience these rollbacks, or we don't experience more rollbacks, and we can hopefully try and protect all of our environmental protections that are already there. So now that I've kind of like discussed a little bit, few more things, what you can do to become a little bit more environmentally and socially involved as a justice champion, I would like to also talk about some things that are going on with water. So right now there's a lack of water. There's lack of water in the Navajo Nation amidst this COVID-19 outbreak. So we discussed a little bit last week about how the Navajo Nation is one of the hardest hit areas for COVID-19 in our country, if not the most hard hit. They are experiencing a lot of struggles, and one of those is with water. And as we know, water is life. It is so vital that we have clean water, particularly. So so we have to make sure that we are able to help this nation and get more water, more clean water, particularly because as we've discussed previously, there are a lot of lead pipes, and lead pipes are, I can't even begin to tell you how bad it is when it comes to drinking water from lead pipes, as there's so many connections to PFAS and mercury and so many, and obviously lead in these pipes that can cause so many brain injuries and just health injuries overall. So it's really important that we discuss and we recognize the importance for water, especially in times like now, and how to make sure that we decrease the amount of toxic things in our water sources, particularly things like lead pipes and PFAS. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about this because these are environmental injustices. It's not just in the Navajo Nation. It's things like Flint, Michigan, things where a lot of people still don't have access to proper clean water. And here we have a little map talking about like drinking water sites, military sites, and other known sites that have different things going on. So we have a lot of petitions on our website about protecting water and stopping these dangerous chemicals. So Darren, would you please share some of those petitions?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you, Leanna. There are 2 more petitions that are on our website, not specifically pertaining to water, but pertaining to toxins. First of all, we just want to say thank you to Representative Almer Suchi from the California 66th District for all his important work. For example, he was one of the people that introduced the Act AB 2762, which would help ban toxic chemicals and pesticides, and in cosmetics. And these are on the slides. You can see the specific chemicals that will be banned if this passes. And so the Environmental Working Group has a petition that you can sign on our website to help support this act. One of the things we've been talking about a lot recently is PFAS, and so hopefully this law will be passed so that we can prevent all those health issues like hormone imbalance, child development, things like that. And the second one is to ban flame retardants in consumer goods. Flame retardants are one of the things that aren't adequately tested for like human health effects, and we're allowing them in a lot of consumer products. So we can also look at this petition from Earth Justice on our website. You can get these links. Again, very simple, you just put in your information. So Yes, if you have some time, check them out.
Thank you so much, Darren, for talking about those petitions. Petitions are a great way to help us use our voice and take action, especially during times where we cannot actively go and meet with city council members and state members, and we can't really make those physical connections, but petitions are a great way to do something virtually, especially during times of social distancing and so forth. So like I said, today's all about becoming a social environmental justice champion. And so here we at Clean for Kids, we've kind of narrowed it down to 10 steps. So the first one is being informed, and we hope that by coming to these discussions and also doing your own research, you can become more informed about what is happening, not only in our nation, but in the world in regards to environmental issues as well as social issues, and to begin to kind of assess these problems. Like number two, make the connections between them and find potential solutions to these problems. And so when we start to create these solutions, start thinking about the problems a little bit more, we have to do further research, right, to see what are the probable ways of, fixing these problems. What can we do to spark some change? So that's a really important part of becoming an environmental justice champion. Number four is recognize your strengths. While some people might be more ready to be outspoken on the forefront of discussing of things, there's also a really strong need for people that may have talents or strengths in like media, digital media, like arts, and because arts are the great way to spread awareness and call action to change. It's one of the most prominent ways of actually sparking change. So it's just recognizing where your strengths are and where you can, in a team, perhaps, utilize those strengths, or as an individual, how can you use those strengths to the best of your ability. 5 is writing out your goals. So it's always good to have like a set goal on what you want to do. You don't have to tackle 50 problems at once. Sometimes if you just want to tackle one thing, put all your energy into that one thing, you are going to inspire change no matter what. You do not have to take the world on all at once, so I think writing out your goals is a great way to kind of take things step by step. 6 is reaching out. If you don't want to do this by yourself, find like-minded people and really get together and find people that are going to inspire you and you can inspire them and really create a collective change. And that comes out to 7, which is reviewing your goal and mission. Always remember why you're doing what you're doing and how you're going to go about it, because that is the most important thing at the end of the day, is to stay on track towards your goal. 8 is use your voice and take action. So when you're reviewing your goal and everything, you want to make sure that you're using your voice and taking action to the best of your ability to reach your goal and to really reflect upon your mission. 9 is to rest, reflect, and renew, because as we all know, especially fellow board members and volunteers and so forth, it is exhausting. The fight for change is not easy, and it will never be easy. So it's important to not only fight for change, but also to rest, reflect, and take care of yourself and others, so that way you can have the energy and to create this change, and so you don't burn out. So I think that's one of the most, if not the most important thing on this list, is to always reflect, learn about something else, but also taking care of yourself and repeat, because there's always something new. There's so many problems that need to be addressed, and I think this kind of 10-step thing is a great way to go about it, especially if you're somebody that wants to create this change and you don't know how to go about it. So with this stuff in mind, I'd like to discuss a little bit about the United Nations Sustainability Goals, or they're called SDGs for short. So these goals are a blueprint to how we can achieve a more sustainable future for everybody. So they address a lot of global challenges we face, whether it's poverty, inequality, climate change, peace and justice, all of those. So these 17 goals that you see, they are all interconnected. And that way is because they don't want anybody to be left behind as we move forward in trying to create this change. We want to make sure that we address all problems as they are interconnected. As last week we talked about how interconnectedness is a big thing when we address a lot of change. So it's important that we can achieve all of these goals by 2030. So if you go to the UN website, you can click on any specific goal to learn more about each issue individually. And we hope that you will not only join us, but also these other organizations working towards these issues, as they are really, really important because we need to work together. So feel free to learn more about these sustainable development goals. We sometimes discuss them in panels. We've talked about a few previously. So yeah, so now I would like to introduce a wonderful speaker, Taz. Are you there, Taz?
Yes, I am.
Hello, how are
Hi.
you?
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I just wanted to ask you a quick question to kind of start the conversation.
Sure.
But so as a woman of color and also as a Muslim, I would like to ask you about your concerns about what is happening right now in the world and in our country, and kind of let us know what inspires you to keep going, and if you have any advice about how to face these challenges.
So that's a big question. What's happening in our country, or for that matter, across the world, is everything you guys have mentioned. Issues with our social justice, our environmental justice, people's concern that where are we going from here? How are we preserving this planet for young folks like yourselves? Like, as a parent, my main concern is I want to leave a better world to my child than I received. I want to make sure that our greenhouse gases are reduced, not only just by mandated law, but by voluntary involvement in environmental ways, in ways that we can preserve the earth for our young folks. So that is just environmental concerns we talked about. But environmental justice, as you have mentioned in so many of your presentations and slides, is not just a singular concern. It is a very transactional concern that affects people from all walks of life. And unfortunately, as you showed, people who live in poverty are affected adversely by it than affluent folks. If you look at just San Diego County, for an example, when we go from one city to another, do you know that the water quality that comes out of our tap is vastly different? And that is based on the city's ability to pay for clean water. Like, if in the city of Vista, if we were getting a certain degree of water in the city of Chula Vista, which is, let's say, 30, 40 minutes down the freeway from us, the quality of water is a lot worse because that city does not invest enough money in its water resources. In the city of Vista, they have a private organization, Vista Irrigation District, running it, so they have different procedures, whereas the city runs it differently. So environmental causes affect everyone differently, and it affects all of us in varying differences. The one thing about being a person of color is, like, at this time, you feel like there's so much happening. There's so many discussions about race and gender and inequities that we are all bombarded with these rallies and messages running across. But this is not a problem that was risen today. We've lived with the burden of racism since the inception of this country. Thank God to social media and other avenues where people are talking about it today. And hopefully this dialogue continues. And hopefully with this dialogue, we're able to get somewhere where we see light at the end of the tunnel. When you talk about being a Muslim, you know, I'm a Muslim, I'm a woman of color, I'm a person who wears a hijab. When I step outside my home, I'm carrying that responsibility of representing the Muslim community with me, but also I'm carrying all that negative imagery that goes with being a Muslim. I've lived through 9/11. I'm old enough where I can say I remember everything that happened before and after. And there was definitely a backlash. For a decade or so, Muslims were afraid to come out of their homes. my mother was always afraid when I stepped outside with a hijab on. She asked me multiple times to take off my hijab. I was afraid that if I were to look for a new job, I may not be able to get a new job. When I went back to school, I was uncomfortable sitting in a classroom sometimes because I suffered through those stairs. But I feel like today's environment is getting better. People are accepting people from all walks of life. I don't get as many stares when I go out in the store that I did before, post 9/11. So things are getting better. And because we are taking such an interest in each other's lives, young people are raising their voices and they want this world to work better for them and for generations to come. Things are getting better. So I'm so grateful to be part of this dialogue with you guys. And it's so nice to see this factual aspect of everything you bring, because there's a lot of people who just talk fluff. They just, have anger and rant, but it's amazing to see that you guys are backed with all these facts and figures and so much evidence, so that because evidence is knowledge, and knowledge helps us make better decisions for the future. So I'm very happy to be able to see that you guys are making things better for us.
Thank you so much. It's honestly really important that we discuss these things, especially because a lot of it can be uncomfortable. I think it's important for us to start having these uncomfortable conversations, especially when we think about how everything's interconnected, social justice, racial justice, environmental justice, and everything. So I just kind of want to discuss what inspires you to keep going amidst all of this, besides youth and everything.
So when I initially started, I used to volunteer at different organizations, but still I wasn't so connected with a lot of different issues. I started working for volunteering at the ACLU, and where, I am an immigrant, and I see the treatment of immigrants. But really, when I came to the ACLU, I saw the adversity that undocumented immigrants go through. Immigrants from certain countries are treated better than other immigrants. So people of color and immigrants of color definitely have that disparity in their treatment, and that's what got me involved in working with immigrants' rights. And then came political activism, where I decided that it was my right and my duty and to challenge my elected officials on the decisions they made that affected me at every level of government. Like my city council, the decisions they make affect me the moment I step outside my door, and that made me challenge them on a lot of decisions. And then I started working on different issues. And once you get into a certain realm of activism, you see these issues are so connected. So once you talk about political activism and immigration rights, and then you talk about environmental justice, and then economic justice for everybody, and these issues are layer upon layer of things that just unfold, and it just outrages you. And like I said, it made me angry to see that, is this the world I want to pass on to my child? And that's what keeps me going. But most importantly, and this is something I learned from my father, to be a voice for people who don't have a voice. Be able to stand up for someone who doesn't have the courage or the strength to stand up for. And that's what keeps me going. I get messages from people saying, oh, I'm trying to get economic stimulus check, but I can't because my husband doesn't have papers, or my child is a US citizen, but I am not. And then I get involved, and then I start working on issues like that. So you see layer upon layer of bureaucracy, racism, and bigotry that holds down people of color, holds down certain communities, and that really motivates you to keep going and working for them.
Oh, wow. Just thank you so much for discussing this, because I know I'm learning a lot, because I know I will never understand what people like you go through. I recognize the privilege I have, and it's important that we provide this outlet for you to also speak, and so that also people in the audience can discuss, because like I mentioned, the interconnectedness between it all. But what we're trying to do tonight is talk about how to become this justice champion, whether it's social or environmental justice. And it's important to recognize a lot of, not only just the concerns, but like, you know, a lot of what's going on, like how we have to stand up for others, like you said, like be the voice for other people. And I think that's honestly the biggest like thing. I don't know, I'm inspired by like that as well, to just kind of keep going and everything. So just last question, what advice would you give to people facing challenges and just how to become more active and be that voice for other people?
So it's easy for a lot of people to say, oh, you know, my vote doesn't matter, or what's the point of showing up to city council? They make their own decisions. Or what's the point of writing a letter to my elected officials? Who listens? I never hear back. For those people, especially, I have one thing to say. It is not only, we elect these individuals, especially elected officials, policies that they make for us affect us at a very visceral level. So this is our life that they're dealing with. So it becomes our duty, our responsibility to challenge them at a lot of different causes. So that motivation to take back your life, take back control over what people are making decisions for you. And so it's our job and our duty to grab a seat at the table, make space for yourself at the table. And then once you're at the table, it is your job to make space for people who have not been represented at the table. And so pick a passion. For a student, let's say, you know, like yourself, you guys are so involved. So I'm not somebody who's pre your level. Just pick a passion, anything. If you think that having a clean neighborhood is important, just organize a trash pickup in your neighborhood, whatever, at whatever level you feel motivated, you feel a call for, just pick that and go with it. And don't ever tell yourself, oh, I'm only doing this, or that's not enough, or what's the difference going to be? Because every little effort, every little voice you raise, every little educational conference you have makes a difference. Even if you're able to affect just your small sphere, it will cause a ripple effect, and that will cause a big change. So everything you do makes a change. Don't ever give up.
Thank you so much. That was probably the best advice I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you so much, Taz.
Amazing.
So important, and thank you so much for inspiring us. We'll have to not just have you on again in the panel discussion, but connect with you more often. That's just really, really very helpful. And so we know that you had run for office. I had a question. So you had run for office in Vista, and I know that you know, sometimes if we don't achieve our goal the first time, you know, we come back and we work on that again, or we make changes with the people that are, you know, currently in the council or whatever. Can you talk about your experience running for office and any advice that you would give to people such as Leanna Cortez, who will probably be, you know, I don't know, a senator in the next year? Could you give her some advice, please?
So comparing my story to anyone else's is not fair, because we actually had someone running for the city council, and that person had to withdraw because of health reasons. So at the last minute, the sitting council that we had made really bad choices for our community. We had shown up to city council in very large numbers and spoken against things. But the district that I live in, the city council representing that district, had made poor choices, not representing the wishes of the people, not standing up for the community, not standing up for the city at large. And that's the reason it was so important to challenge this person. So that's what drove me. And when the person running dropped out, people looked at me and said, well, you got to do it. So unfortunately, my story of running for office is not as glamorous as someone else's would be. But one advice I always give young people or people who are going to run office, this is not something that you just get up one day and you say, okay, I'm going to run for office. You have to build relations in your community. You have to be vested in your community, and you have to speak truth to power. Absolutely never give up on your convictions, on your beliefs, and never forget that you are there to represent a community. You are there to represent people who are supporting you in this. And that's what really counts a lot. Winning, no winning, that's a consequential effect. But your voice should be representative of what the community wants to hear, what it is that they want to represent at the council. That's what matters the most. And in the presidential race, I'll go back for a reference to the presidential case, there was a lot of candidates who had a lot of wonderful things, who brought a lot of great ideas to the table. They might not have made to the finish line. They did not make it to the finish line. But the ideas they talked about, those are ideas that other candidates carried, hopefully, and those are ideas that will materialize and benefit society and community at the end. So even if you do not win, the ideas you bring to your community, the policies you work on are going to be in effect sooner or later. And that's what matters. That change, that integral change that we bring as part of the community is what counts.
So important. You're such an inspiration, and proud to call you a friend. So thank you for all the important things that you and your husband do. Just proud to know you, and thank you so much for all that you do, and thank you for being on here. I would like to say that also a friend of mine, Jamie Washington, an educator and teacher, she was on last week, and her throat is a little bit sore, so she's not going to speak, but Leanna is going to share a little bit about Juneteenth and talk about that, and share a little bit of hope for us. Before Leanna does that, I'd also like to give shout outs to our artist, Judith Panetta, who, studying away, is not on tonight, but she is listening. So she's here to support you guys. And her art shines through, and we're so proud of her. She'll have her art on no idling signs that are posted in Oceanside School District and Vista School District, along with the others that enter our contests and win, and all of that kind of stuff. We're so excited to reduce air pollution and bring awareness. We're excited for our radio commercials that will be airing, and our auditions, and all the great things that we do. And as Leanna said, students, just fill out your 2 pages of notes and send it to me, please, and we'll make sure that you get community service credit for that. So there's so many other people that were unable to join us tonight. We also have our wonderful and just amazing youth that leads Team 4. So water. And Janice was unable because of the tech problems that have gone on tonight. I experienced them myself. And we had Christine Gorman, who's a pesticide warrior. She's fighting all these pesticides and toxic chemicals, and has forever. She also had problems with her audio. So I know that, tonight the tech, I apologize for that, you guys, but so we didn't get to hear from Janice. So sorry about that, but huge props to the people who spoke tonight. You guys picked up for others, and Kevin, you didn't have all the slides right in front of you that you would have loved to have, but you just spoke from your heart, and you're going to be an excellent nurse. So that's what it's about, just stepping up and sharing your information. If it doesn't go as planned and you don't have, all of the slides and, perfectly in front of you or whatever, you just speak from your heart and just put it out there. So, standing up. So excellent job tonight. And Darren, as always, thank you so much for all of your important facts. Yes, of course, we have public records from the County of San Diego regarding pesticides that are used. If anyone is interested in that data or maps, we're working with the County of San Diego to ban pesticides that are very toxic. As Darren said, here in Oceanside, we have pesticides being used that are banned in China and several other countries. We had hoped very much that West Coast Tomatoes would work with us and reduce pesticide use. So we've done everything. I was poisoned by their helicopter. It's on city and county land. Turned my life upside down. And burned my lungs. And here we are still trying to reach out to ask what kind of support that we can give to help them transition, because those homes that are right there are less than 1/4 of a mile. The governor said there is to be no spraying during COVID-19 while the kids are home. So that's something with the County of San Diego and Ag Weights and Measures that they have to answer to, of what has and has not happened in the city of Oceanside and others, thinking about how are we going to protect our kids, you know, teachers like me, you know, are people with pre-existing conditions. So we're fired up. We've got the knowledge, we've got the power. So we just need to rest in that power. Just know we've got it here, and just go forward. So we're really grateful for all of the amazing people that are attending tonight, and all of our great interns around the country, and all that you guys are doing, because it's about bringing awareness to these issues and calling it out. So and hopefully working with the officials, and hopefully working with people, because that's the best way to do it. So Leanna, could you share, and again, you guys, Kevin, Darren, and Leanna, wow, way to carry this despite tech, despite people not able to get on. I mean, you're just like champions. You're all environmental champions, and congrats to all 3 of you, actually. You actually were scholars. Can see why, if you haven't already donated to our scholarship fund, why that needs to happen. So Darren will be attending UCLA, Leanna is going to UCSD, and Kevin is going to SDSU, and their futures are bright. So excited about that. So John is going to share for us, we've got a few tech things going on about Juneteenth, and Leanna is going to give us some great information, important information. We cannot forget, it's not in our history books, wasn't in my history books, Juneteenth. I didn't know, or Juneteenth, I should say, but we need to learn all we can and walk together forward, making these important changes. And also shout out to Sterling Macer Jr. last week, you know, actor, filmmaker, amazing friend, my friend from high school, just the best actor of all times. Let me just say that right now, and a really cool guy, making changes in LA. Excited to work with the youth of color there, and so excited about that. And thanks also to Yusuf Miller, Racial Justice Coalition, being on last week. It feels like last night, last week. So we're excited, and we're just so excited to be working with you guys. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for supporting our youth. So, okay, Leanna, take it away.
Okay, so like Suzanne mentioned, I'm going to talk a bit about Juneteenth, but I also did not learn about whatsoever my entire K through 12 career. I'm graduated. I know not a single thing in a single textbook. So it's important that we talk about that, especially when we talk about social justice today, and about being a social justice champion as well. So so Juneteenth is about celebrating and commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. However, this it was actually 2.5 years after the famous Emancipation Proclamation, which you may have learned about in history. I hope you learned about in history, depending if you're younger or not. But for the older folk out there, I hope you guys briefly know what I'm talking about. But that's essentially the end-all be-all for slavery. And the reason why it's 2.5 years later is because slavery didn't necessarily completely end, especially towards the southern areas, especially the areas like Texas and so forth, until this date. They weren't fully free. And so this holiday represents the first grasp of true freedom felt by those who were enslaved. The celebration basically allowed many to reunite with their families and to reassure one another that everything would be okay, and that they, despite not knowing what was going to happen next, that they at least could feel comfort in that, knowing that they were not enslaved anymore. So today, in the modern time, it celebrates African American freedom and achievement and enrichment, while it also encouraging this idea of self-development and respect for all cultures across the board. So as Juneteenth will be celebrated tomorrow, it's important to also reflect on some historical moments throughout history. So I'll briefly discuss about something that happened in Tulsa. I think it's like Tulsa, I believe I'm pronouncing it right, and particularly Black Wall Street. So Wall Street is kind of a term, you know, we hear about the infamous New York Wall Street, but when we talk about Black Wall Street, we talk about money making and wealth, right? And so the Black community was very prosperous, and they were thriving, but it was ruined by a white mob. So thousands of Black people lost their lives at the hands of white mob of people that occurred at Black Wall Street. So over 1,200 Black homes were burned, and all these people's lives were lost. And it's honestly probably the single worst act of racial violence in American history that ever occurred. And it's not talked about. You know, we don't learn about this in history classes, and it's not in our textbooks, and it's not discussed. So that's why we're taking this time to, you know, discuss a little bit of this history, as it's important that we make the effort to educate one another on these events as we go back to our 10 steps. Step one is becoming informed. So I just wanted to kind of share this, this piece of history with you all. So there were about 10,000 Black residents living in what people called Black Wall Street in Greenwood. And the amount of people that lost their homes and their lives, it's just honestly heartbreaking, and it should never, and should never let that happen again. So like I said, that's why we need to learn our history. We need to communicate about these things, shine lights on everything that's happening, and demand change, whether it's uncomfortable or not. We have to work together to make progress and to evoke true change within our society, and make sure that these things get in the history textbooks, and talk about these holidays and these tragic historical events, because those are ultimately what gonna create this, collective want for change, and will allow us to really create progress within our society. So I hope that you guys learned a little bit about something that happened, a piece of history, and a little bit about this Juneteenth holiday that not many people know about, and just, learn to open your hearts to informing and to really evoking empathy for these situations, and to really use that as power to create change. So I just want to thank all of the youth board members, all of our speakers, especially Jamie Washington. I know you're supposed to speak about this today. I hope I did you justice. She's an amazing educator and a friend who's using her voice and experience to have these really needed discussions, while also educating herself on environmental justice too, and the connections and such. So we're all learning together, we're all empathizing together, and we're all trying to make change here and Clearing for Kids. So I really do hope that you guys join us in our mission and learn something today, or take something away from this discussion, whether it applies to yourself or you want to share this information with others. As long as one person gets to become informed and wants to spark change, that is all that matters. So thank you all very much for attending. And yes, so I'll pass it back to Suzanne.
Okay, that was awesome. Thank you so much. You just amaze me more and more every day. I'm just so lucky to have you guys in my life.